Can you hear me? Oh, excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Ignite. Hope you've had a pretty good sessions so far, seen lots of things, learning lots of things. My name is Colin. I'm a senior product manager at Microsoft. So in this session, I'm going to talk to you about Windows 10 for IoT, Internet of Things, and industry devices. And then what happens when these devices land in your enterprise, how you would want to manage them, make sure they're secure like any other IT asset. Then we're going to go into a little bit into how you can take advantage of Windows 10 IoT and some of its capabilities and features. So we're going to get into a little bit of features, do a few demos so you can see some of the capabilities that are landing in Windows 10, and then really talk about how you can use some of this information when you're thinking about transforming your business today. So that's what today's session is about. So hopefully you're in the right session. It's a 100-level session. If you're not, I won't be offended if you walk up. No? Okay. It's happened before. People end up in the wrong session. And feel free to ask questions. I know there's a fairly big audience here, but I'm okay if you want to shout out, raise your hand, and ask questions as I go along. My clicker working. So let's first talk about some of the, the business challenges, transformation of business that I just mentioned. So, nothing new here. Business leaders, business decision makers, they're all faced with, doing more with less. Reducing cost, have to improve efficiencies, take that line of business asset that you have today, extend the life of that, to increase revenue, and then create new business models. And there's nothing net new here. Everyone has to think about this in some shape or form. But to do all of this in this increasing consumer-driven and digital world, that really is the question here. And then the short answer is, how is it possible it's really possible when you fully embrace this digital era. So you think about Uber, how they transformed that taxi business, how they've connected consumers, directly with their service. They're creating that digital world, putting people in contact with the solutions directly. They've completely digitized that business. The revolution happened for books online. These are major, major transformations in business. And this is this digital business that I'm talking about. A little problem with my clicker here. To be in range. So the first aspect is really how you realize that digital business. So everyone here has e-businesses. You've got your ERP systems, your management systems. But the first thing is really realizing this digital business, and it's really different from an e-business in terms of they're all connected. It's connecting your business assets, your business systems, with the resources, with the people using it, your customers, and the things in the middle, these assets, line of business assets that you're using today, or if it's a mobile device. So it's really connecting all those together. So this is really what is making the fundamental shift. What we're seeing happening in a lot of industries and a lot of businesses today is a shift to this e-business for IoT, where you're connecting all these systems together and connecting the things, which is your assets, with each other, with your businesses, and with your customers, your people themselves. So once we start to realize, the things is a pivotal point here, we can start to go down a little bit of a journey of some investigation, how we look at our enterprises today. So first is, just looking at your enterprise, just understanding those concepts of, okay, I have an enterprise, I have all these siloed assets, they're talking to these disparate systems, they're not connected. I'm getting good information from them. It's a point of sale terminal. It's connected to my POS system. I'm getting good information from customers, but it's not talking to other devices. So, you've got these siloed systems with limited visibility, They don't share insights to each other. So, one POS terminal doesn't know what the digital sign is doing, doesn't know what the vending machine's doing. They're just separate systems, but they're talking to your enterprise. And that's pretty much how, just doing some basic research, how a lot of the systems a lot of Microsoft systems, and a lot of our customers, how they're operating today. So I'm just going to call that legacy operational systems. So if we think about transforming a business, just to spark a little bit of thought amongst people when you're looking at those imperatives for leaders, how about changing your business, think about how you would do this if you start to connect your assets to each other, rather than being these disparate things. You don't have to change fundamentally your whole system. You have assets today. You have your line of business assets today. You have your systems. But then think about how you would connect the dots, basically. You're connecting these assets so that they can communicate with each other. You can get more data from them. And then you can actually onboard that data and have a much more richer user experience and get lots of insights from the data from those devices. So in this simple little bubble diagram here, if I was thinking of a retail solution, again, think of my digital sign. I'm walking into a retail store, the digital sign's got sensors, it sees me, I see it. If I actually stare at the sign long enough, I move closer, there's information there from that proximity center. It's gathering information from me. It can then relay that information to the next sign. So I may be interested in T-shirts, and these really cool blue T-shirts I've seen. And I'm looking at that, and the next sign I go to, it's telling me they're on sale. It's creating a journey for me. So by connecting the dots on these systems, having these systems talk to each other, you start to get a lot more insights and information when you start to share and collaborate that information with devices and the things in your enterprise. So we believe, it's at our fingertips right now. We're at a little bit of a tipping point where we have customers investing in this, experimenting with this, creating solutions today. There are enterprise customers who are investing in this technology. They've got devices. You've all got devices. They're adding extra intelligence to them, small little agents, API add-ins to their apps running on the devices. They're getting more data out of them. And they're onboarding that using all the services in Azure or other systems. They're onboarding it using Service Bus, getting all that telemetry really fast, and then doing analytics, HD Insights, getting some analytics on it, and creating actually business value. So that's some of the transformation we've seen people do. We've got some case studies online where we've got case studies where people are doing, I think one of them is ThyssenKrupp. They manufacture elevators. So a worldwide company manufacture elevators. And they have lots of mission-critical, they have lots of mission-critical components to their systems. So, the last thing they want is an expensive, component going, and then they have to send out service technicians. It's very costly. So by putting in small, devices and measuring and monitoring and onboarding all that to a service, in this case, the cloud, Azure, they're able to gather insights on monitoring that device, whether it's going to wear down, break down, and they can actually dispatch a technician before something is going to break, to actually repair something, update it before it gets to that critical point, and then they've got a down system and loss of customer satisfaction and also loss of revenue. So we think today we're at this point where you have the systems in place, there's technology in place to actually start creating this digital world where you're connecting all your assets to your business systems. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's been out there for quite a while now. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're just utilizing what's there at your fingertips. Definitely having problems with technologies. Okay. So that was a little business overview. I'm just going to switch gears on you now. So we're going to talk about the core aspects of IoT, and we're going to focus on the things and Windows. Windows 10 for IoT. So really, really high level, we think of it as four major things. It's the devices that you have, whether it be, again, POS terminal, ATM, a robot, whatever your line of business asset is, the things, the data that they produce, whether it's through sensors or the devices themselves, and then those devices connecting to the cloud, connecting to the sensors, connecting to each other, all that connectivity. And then the analytics, what you get out of all of that by ingesting all that data, looking at it with not just the data from the devices, but the data from your actual systems as well. When you start to do that comparison of data from your existing systems with the new data from these devices, that's when things suddenly go, we can do this, we can do that. We can actually change our business. It may not be revolutionary like a Uber or a Amazon, but it'll change your business where it'll have an impact on profitability, extending that asset maybe a little bit further or increasing revenue somehow. So, hold on, there we go. So I'm just going to focus on the devices part. There's lots of other sessions on Azure and connectivity and everything else. So I'm just going to give you a little video of the types of devices I'm talking about. We need volume for this. But there's some cool music that plays along with this video, by the way. And I won't sing it to you. I'm terrible. I'll clear the room in like 5 seconds. Is there a volume? Nope, can't see the volume. So, in the business, 20 years. Microsoft's been there, creating devices. We work with 8,000 OEMs, creating all these line of business assets for you, for the enterprise. There's nothing new here. But you can see the vast range of devices. Just in that short little clip, there was, I think it was one of my tests here. It's like, how many devices? But there was just a few devices there. Too many to actually think about. So 8,000 OEMs, there are thousands of devices each OEM sometimes builds, different device type classes. So to put it pretty simply, we tend to look at it in a very simplistic approach where you have device capabilities, form, fit, and function, processing power, apps they have to run, the number of apps, the complexity of those, with basically a price point. Is it something simple? Is it a little gateway device? Is it a camera, a smart camera? Is it a MRI machine, a multi-million-dollar MRI machine that's very complicated? So there's a huge range of devices. So we put them on a scale, and there's no right addition or platform as there is in the Windows 8 timeframe for each one. But in the Windows 10 timeframe, so when we release Windows 10 this summer, we'll have a Windows 10 for IoT. So we're going to cover this whole range of devices, these thousands of devices that we've built over the past 20 years with our partners, and we're coming up with new additions for them. So these are not the actual names. Actually, one name is actually real here, called Windows 10 IoT Core. But we're just coming up with versions that will actually map to these rough categories. So the first one is for industry devices. We're just calling it Windows 10 IoT for industry devices. This will be the full OS. This will be the full Windows 10 that has legacy support for Win32 apps and modern universal Windows applications. So typically, the same specs you would see from Windows 10 desktop and enterprise today. Same specs for running on that hardware. And what we do with this edition is this one also has what we call embedded features, things that make it a little bit more hardened as a device. And then some of those things are lighting up in the enterprise edition today anyway. So these would be features to enable it to boot into an application or boot into set applications, whether they're Win32 or more modern Windows Universal apps. And then on the mobile device category, again, we'll have a mobile edition so the difference here is the mobile edition is just for modern applications, just for universal Windows applications. So I don't know if people have come to some of the breakout sessions, other smaller theater sessions, but this would be an example. You probably can't see this at the back, but this would be an example of a mobile device. This is a ruggedized one from Panasonic. This one's you can drop, you can throw it underwater. This is waterproof. It goes down to minus 20 degrees C. Very ruggedized. It has an integrated peripheral. This has a barcode scanner. So there are lots of different form factors and functions, and again, price points. But you get the full mobile, you get the full modern Windows experience on this type of device. So all the power of Windows. But then we also enhance this to make sure you actually have capabilities to manage this in an enterprise scenario. So across all these editions here, we'll have the common core allows us to manage them the same way and configure them the same way, deploy them the same way, and then set up policy. So I'll come to that in a couple more slides in a minute. And then the third category is Windows 10 IoT Core. So last week at Build, we announced Windows 10 on the Raspberry Pi. This is free. We gave this away free. So there's a technical preview. This is free for everyone. And this was announced last week. You can get it online, windowsondevices.com. So this is just the core. So again, the difference here, there's no shell, there's no UI. So some of these devices may end up in your enterprise, some may not. So we're giving this to our OEMs as well to create things like an IoT gateway. So this would be a device that hooks all these sensors together, is doing some measurement and testing. So think of a scenario that's an industrial automation scenario, some mission-critical application, maybe an oil rig, where you've got sensors for like gases and temperature, and these are on a hard and ruggedized device, and it's just onboarding all that data. So you want it reliable. And again, it's just running one application. All it's doing is doing some processing on the device itself. It's gathering information, and it's sending alerts, and it's also onboarding all that to Azure as well. So that would be like an industrial gateway device. It doesn't need the shell. It doesn't need the full desktop experience. So we've created this Windows 10 IoT Core for two paradigms here. One is for fun, for the makers, where we distribute it. It's free for everyone. And there's another one, the same basic version, which is for our device builders building enterprise-grade, mission-critical devices. So because we're coming out with this, in parallel, this is Windows 10. This is just all based on the same code base. We get to leverage some fantastic benefits because it's the same edition that you've been playing with. If you're who's in the Insider program now? Hands up. Thought there'd be more. But a few of you, okay. So the Windows Insider program, you get to play, with the latest bits, and what you're playing with there, you'll see these features start to light up in the next few weeks. Some of these features for Windows IoT. And some of them are there now. You just probably don't know about it. It hasn't been publicized a lot. But lots of these features are there right now in the Insider Program editions that people can play with. So we get to leverage what we call one Windows platform. So all these editions are based on the same code base. So they have the same mobile device management stack. So they get to leverage, so you can actually manage all these devices the same way now. In the past, you'd have slightly different management approaches for an industry device versus your PC, your PCs and phones in your enterprise. It's a slightly different approach because the industry device was on a different version of Windows and had different capabilities, and sometimes IT would go, we just leave that to the side. It's okay. It's a rugged device. No one's going to really bother about that. But the point is, that thing's connected to your network. I mean, it's a point of attack as well. And we've all seen those breaches happen as well. You've heard of Target and all these other retailers being hacked. that device hanging out there on the edge of your network is definitely a security breach. And I think everyone's been hacked recently with all the changes in these very complicated, sophisticated organizations targeting us, targeting enterprise customers, targeting corporations, targeting governments. So with the One Windows platform, we get to leverage all that common device management. We get to leverage also the one universal Windows platform. And what I mean by that is the applications you land on top of those line of business assets, they work seamlessly across device to device to device. And then the second aspect is the security. There's lots of security announcements recently at RSA. So we're talking about the security of enterprise-grade security in these devices. I'll talk a little bit about Device Guard. There's a great session at the end of the week that goes into detail about a feature called Device Guard, which really does harden and lock down that device. And then all the security, all the connectivity. So when people talk about connectivity, they think, oh, it's a device, it's IoT, it's connecting to Azure, connecting to the cloud. I'm talking about not just that connectivity, not just the agents and the different protocols we support and stack we support to make it fairly open but give you lots of choices to onboard data. But I'm talking about the connectivity from device to device and also from device to sensor. So these are some of the big IoT investments where we're making sure we have all that connectivity so you can create those IoT solutions. So it's easy to connect a sensor to a Windows 10 device. It's easy for a Windows 10 device to talk to another Windows 10 device. And it's easy for a Windows 10 device to talk to a non-Windows device, like an Android device, a Linux device, an iOS device. So I'll talk about those APIs and capabilities we're putting into the platform. And the nice thing is, this is not just IoT, this is all of Windows 10. So now when we make these investments as a company, they go across the whole of Windows 10. So I'll talk about One Windows platform a little bit more. So for line of business assets, one of the key things I've heard from customers at some recent shows was their investment in apps when they have to scale them across devices. And again, like this device here with the built-in peripheral, or it's a magstripe reader or some kind of widget into the device. It's a purpose-built device for your enterprise. But it's not just one device we're talking about. You normally have a range of them for in different scenarios. And then when you have to go change your enterprise application, it's a huge investment. Because now I've got to write an app for this device, write an app for this device. I've got to find drivers and expertise on integrating this peripheral, and they don't match, and you get out of sync, and it becomes a huge expense. And the real kicker is time to market. In this world of rapid change and innovation, being first or being like current with people to stay competitive, you need to change and be competitive. So having one Windows platform on one universal Windows platform, we get to leverage our app model and scale it across all these devices. So in our booth, we've got some examples of this where we've written universal apps, and we have customers doing this today, where they scale their investments. And we have one customer who, I can't tell you the name, but they've taken a portfolio of devices, they shrunk them down, they've used some new cool devices that can leverage doing the same task that these 11 did. They went from 11 to 3. So they manage 3 devices now that serve the same purpose. But their app model is they have one app that goes across those 3 devices to do the task of 11. And now when they do changes, it's just a rapid change, and boom, it's all to all 3. So it enables this particular customer to be very responsive to market needs and stay competitive. Where in the past they were a little bit behind, we've just actually started to see, they've just implemented this, they're actually starting to see some improvements internally on their utilization of those assets, how easy it is to use. and the new form factors and functionality with a modern application, how easy it is for their own internal people to use. So one key aspect of that scenario is all these peripherals. So we still support UPOS and all these legacy ways of attaching barcode scanners and other peripherals. But in the Windows 10, and actually some of it has already happened in Windows 8, clicker. We are actually making sure that that app model does scale when you have peripherals plugged in. So if you're writing a modern application, a universal Windows app, and you're talking to a barcode scanner or a magstripe reader or a receipt printer and some of these other peripherals, and this one's aimed at retail, is that app will scale. So if you go from one device to another device, I don't have to worry about, oh, well, now it's so-and-so's barcode scanning engine. So now I've got to go change everything or go talk to them and get them to help me write a driver and make sure it works on this new device. So now, as an enterprise customer, you are now starting to be unlocked and pigeonholed into just using one device. You can actually start to think about mixing your model and leveraging, one vendor against another vendor, not putting all your eggs in one basket. I mean, I've gone down this path. I've been on the other side of this from Microsoft. I've been on the flip side of this where I've been locked into buying just from one vendor because that's our app model, and to change is too difficult. To change to another piece of hardware, I've got to go write the app. My dev team is somewhere else now. They're investing somewhere else. I can't just run the same app on that new device. I've got to go get drivers done, change the barcode APIs, change the scanner APIs, the magstripe reader APIs. So this is really cool. So in Windows 10 now, if you're writing a universal Windows app, you retail peripherals, it'll scale across all those devices. So the other thing about one Windows platform is, again, the device management. We have one consistent device management approach. I'm not sure if some of the device management sessions have gone on. I think they have. But in our device management for industry devices, IoT-type devices, we're leveraging the OMA-DM protocol. So this allows us to have this consistent device management across the whole of Windows 10 devices. Question?
We're actually having a Friday morning, we'll be covering some of this.
Okay, so gentleman down here said he's from Intune. He's got an early Friday morning. They're covering some of this. So I won't spoil anything. This is just my one slide on, on this. So again, you get to leverage it across all these different, Intune, System Center, Configuration Manager, and third parties by having this one device management approach, which is really good for these line of business assets. As we start to move forward, things will start to become easier for your enterprises managing these. So I'll just do a little drill down into some of these. So one is on these mobile devices. We're making sure in the IoT timeframe, in the Windows 10 timeframe, you can light up scenarios that you wouldn't normally do on the phone platform. So one is a multi-user scenario where we enable you to, on that phone OS, in the Windows 10 timeframe, that mobile OS, to configure the device, have multiple user roles. So unlike your phone, which is just one-to-one, I can configure my phone. It's got my apps, my Angry Birds, whatever I have on my phone. That's just my device. But if you're creating a line of business asset, so this is not BYOD, this is be an enterprise mobile device, you'll be able to configure it to multiple user profiles. You can have a profile for a manager, profile for a user, to actually light up different apps, so it'll actually bring up different applications on the device per that user role. It will lock it down with assigned access, so you can lock down the applications. You can lock down all the settings, so you can stop people from getting access to certain settings. If you don't want them to change anything, they're just a sales associate, lock them down from everything if you want. And then provisioning. So and often these mobile devices are, they're rolled out in these big numbers sometimes. So provisioning can be, a challenge to an enterprise. It's an added cost when you want to scale out quickly as well. So provisioning, we've added features in for provisioning to do like bulk enrollment. So, this type of device or any other mobile device, you've got options to pair it with NFC or pair it with your phone, push a policy to it, and it will automatically roll into your mobile device management policy. It will actually automatically connect to your Wi-Fi, connect to your network, go pull down the policy, and then push that to the device and configure the device. So it's a great way to do bulk enrollment securely, where I can either do it from as a manager, use my phone. I can use my phone. I could use an NFC card. I can use an SD card if the device supports it. I could use a barcode if the device has a barcode scanner. So these are great ways to do that bulk enrollment and just reduce your IT costs and spend in rolling out these new deployments as well. So I can show you what I mean. I'll do a little demo here. To show you one device. Switch to my 8. So here's my device here. So this is a simple login app. I just wrote, well, I didn't write this one, someone else did. So someone wrote a simple login application that allows me to log in as an associate. I can just sign in. I've got no password here. And then you see, I've got 3 apps. I've got my settings, my calendar, and the login app. So there's a few more apps that are not pinned to the main menu there. So if I go to settings, I've got a few settings here as an associate. And then if I sign out, and then go to my login app, so if I go in as a manager now, you'll see a completely different profile, different themes you can change. And now I can see my manager's apps, my different apps I have here. And then my system settings, I've got access to a lot more settings here. So we're really empowering, with Windows 10 and IoT, we're making sure all these capabilities are across this platform so that the mobile device, as well as the desktop, the full-featured device, you have parity in terms of like multiple users, identity, access, so you can actually have that application go from one to the other for different use cases. So security. So there are lots of cool sessions at Ignite about security. So I'm just going to talk to you about securing these line of business assets. Again, I'll pick on poles, but again, it could be a thin client. It could be a device that's out there on the edge of your network. It's used by many people. It's not a single device. So we have lots of new capabilities coming out in Windows 10 to really address hardening that device. So if you think about security for a line of business asset, what we keep doing as organizations is we keep adding to the perimeter. We keep adding like firewalls and extra malware and extra things to protect everything in the middle. We protect all these devices, call it the soft squishy stuff in the middle. We keep adding layers. And if you think of how sophisticated people are at attacking now, again, I said earlier on, it's not just the teenager in his basement doing it for fun. You've got organizations with very, very smart people attacking your devices, attacking your enterprise. So we have a new feature called Device Guard for line of business assets to really harden the device. I'll talk about that. We obviously got advancements in TPM, the latest TPM support, and some lockdown capabilities. And I'll get into those in the next couple of slides. So those will actually also harden the device as well, to reduce the risk of that being an attack point, people getting access to it. But they'll also make the device a more user and more predictable experience for your scenario. So Device Guard I'm not going to do too many spoilers here. There's a great session at the end of the week on Device Guard. So Device Guard is basically going to only run trusted apps. So this requires a TPM2 and some UEFI support from your OEM, from your device manufacturer. So there's only certain devices that will support it. So think of a high-end POS terminal or something from NCR as one. And then once you enable that, even if someone had access to that device, and maybe I'm the hacker, I actually see your credentials, I get admin access, I download malware.exe, I try and run it, that won't run. It's only ever going to run trusted apps. And this is at the hardware, the root hypervisor layer. So this is something that you wouldn't want for all your assets. I mean, you just think about this for, maybe just mission critical assets. Again, things that are in a really highly vulnerable area, and the data from there, like, again, I pick on POS terminal because it's PCI compliance, it's people's credit cards, it's user information. If that stuff leaks, it really does damage your business. You've seen what happened to people's stock when there's a breach for this particular company. It loses 10, 20%. CEOs lose their jobs. IT people are under the collar. So that's Device Guard. It's a great new feature coming in Windows 10 to really harden and lock down the device so that only trusted apps will ever run, even if someone got access to the device. So let's talk about some of the other capabilities. So these will be coming in. These are in some of our existing editions, but these will be coming to the Windows Enterprise Edition, some of these features and capabilities. So there's a feature called write filters. So this allows you to create these read-only devices and have this improved system uptime. So write filter is basically an overlay of memory on the device. You turn it on. You can control it with a policy. You can write PowerShell scripts to configure it as well. You'll boot up the device once you've turned it on. If anything changes to the device, someone rewrites, uninstalls an app, changes or moves things around, it'll actually, on a power recycle, it will come back to that same known state. Because you've only written things to that overlay. And then once you cycle power, boom, it's back to square one. So this is a great feature for creating, for thin clients, when multiple people use the device. Or for, if anyone flew here on Alaska and managed to rent one of those little terminals they have, that's using this feature. When they hand it to multiple people and they get to play with the internet and watch their movies, they just recycle power on that thing and boom, it's back to square one. So this is a great feature to actually put on a line of business tablet or some kind of doctor's tablet or some check-in reception area, something where it's going to be used by multiple people you don't have a lot of control over. And then also reduce the IT costs, because that asset's your asset as a company, and the last thing you want is, there's another support call, it's in some weird state. Now you just say cycle power, or you push down a policy for it to automatically cycle power at the end of every shift, end of every day. So this feature is actually, if anyone's on the Insider program played with Enterprise, this feature is actually there now. You can go play with it. That's actually popped up into the Enterprise Edition at this moment. Actually, what I'll do is I'll show you a quick demo of it. I'll actually see if my little device here is working. Maybe it's not. I've had technical difficulties the past few days. We'll carry on. So the other one is USB control. So again, you've got granular control over USB devices. Again, hardening a device. There's lots of other security aspects, but I'm just talking about the physical device itself. You can lock down the USB ports on that device, the drives, the peripherals, anything USB. You've got granular control over the class ID, the type of device. You can create USB sticks that only IT managers are allowed to use. Have them BitLockered and have them class ID approved and push it down as a policy, and that'll be the only device allowed on that, only USB device allowed on that asset. So again, that's also coming in the Windows 10 timeframe. I believe that's also in the latest edition that got pushed out. And then if we think of, again, these line of business assets, their functionality, again, you don't want the desktop experience. You don't want notifications. You don't want pop-ups. Think of digital signs. How many of you have seen a digital sign with a blue screen or a pop-up or something there? How many of you have seen that? A few of you, yeah. It's embarrassing. I go, oh, this isn't Windows. It's embarrassing. And it's embarrassing because the person who's designed that hasn't even turned this on. It's there in the product. They just haven't turned on that feature. You can actually turn on that feature, suppress all the pop-ups and notifications when you run your digital sign asset, the app that's running on the device. Pretty simple thing to do. Creates a better user experience for that asset as well. And stops people clicking on it, touching it, and getting access to things they shouldn't. The other one is blocking all the keys and edges and gestures and all those things. Again, you've got control over all of that granularly as well. Think of making a kiosk. Think of turning an existing asset you have today, turning it into a check-in, a self-service check-in. Again, you can lock down keys, the Alt F4, Control X, all the hotkeys that people in the know have to get access to the system. You can start to block all of those. You've even got control over blocking scan codes. So when you plug in like a scanner to a USB port, it actually transmits like scan codes that can force the system to do something else. So you can block all of those as well. And you can block them regardless of whether it's an actual physical keyboard or an on-screen keyboard. So again, these are great ways to harden the device, lock it down, but also really provide that, that predictable user experience. So App Locker and layout control. So these things are changing in Windows 10. Before they were not in the embedded edition. So those of you who are familiar with the embedded editions, App Locker was not in there. So in the Windows 10 timeframe, that's obviously part of the Enterprise Edition. The one we come out with for IoT devices, that will have App Locker. So you've got control over which apps are allowed. You can whitelist, blacklist applications, and have control over what's shown on the device. We're also changing some of our UI layout controls. We're pushing that into the shell and into policy that allows you to customize and configure the UI and the layout. So again, it's going to make it easier for you to just push a policy and have the design you want of that layout, have it in an easier way to configure and design the layout for these line of business assets. And then the last one is really being able to launch applications. So you create an auto login. So when someone turns on the device, it boots straight into your application. So is anyone familiar with assigned access in Windows today? Assigned access? A couple of people. So assigned access, you've got it in Windows today, allows you to boot into a modern application. You set a user, an app, a single app. And then when you log in as that user, it boots that application. And it locks down the gestures and it locks down keys. But it's just a single app experience. And then you can actually get into that. If you don't hide the Windows key or shield it somehow, you can break out of that application. So the app launcher is kind of like that assigned access, but it gives you control over what happens if the app crashes or closes or something like that. You can actually reboot the app, you can reboot the system, you can force a logout, you can do different things based on what happens to the application. And then there's a shell launcher as well, and this is really designed for legacy, Win32 desktop applications. There's a way to point to either your own shell. You could create your own shell completely. It's quite a sophisticated thing to do. Or you could literally point to your app. So your Win32 app becomes your shell. So you can get yourself into trouble here. You can make like Notepad your shell. So when the machine boots up, that's it, Notepad. There is no shell. That's it. So you can get into some tricky situations there. So, if you're experimenting, experiment on your friend's machine. So this is, again, very powerful features to create these custom, line of business experiences on those assets you have. And so what's coming in the Windows 10 timeframe, we're supporting both of these existing features that we have today. And then we're also enhancing it by creating a multiple application locking mechanism, where very similar to assigned access, but you can actually boot up into multiple apps and have everything locked down, like gestures, keys, notifications, all with a simple, assign a user profile, assign the apps, and a layout, and that's it. You don't have to worry about configuring the keys, configuring the gestures. You just a very simple policy to create a multiple app lockdown. So you could have, it could be like, I can pick up on the thin client maybe, a thin client. You've got your Citrix application on there that boots up, or maybe it's, RDP, remote desktop. And then maybe you've got the browser there. Maybe you have a legacy IE, or maybe you've got Chrome, or maybe you've got Spartan, Edge, as it's called. So you could have a few applications there so they can browse locally, but also get into their remote desktop. Again, you'd be able to use that feature to boot into those apps and lock it down and just have that one experience. Combine that with your filters, and then you'll get into a pretty robust device. Turn on Device Guard, and you're getting really, really secure there. So these are lots of capabilities we actually have today, but we're making sure these all pop and surface in Windows 10 in the IoT editions. Now, there's some mapping going on regarding the core. So Windows IoT Core, if you've seen it, it runs on things like this, the little Raspberry Pi. So this is a $35 board. And the core doesn't, some of these features will not apply because the core just runs an app. There is no shell, so there is no shell launcher. There's no app launcher because effectively you just have one app. So on the core, it only runs one universal app. So some very key differences on the core product to the mobile and the desktop/enterprise. So if I look at each of these features, pretty much you can do all of them on the core in a different way because they're not applicable, apart from the right filter one. It's the only one that will be in the higher end edition, the ability to write an overlay and have it boot back to the same experience. So how many of you actually tried out the Raspberry Pi at all yet? Has anyone tried it out? Okay. Have you had success? Have you got it up and running? There are a few. Oh, just interesting. Yeah, we've got a few people. It's a little bit tricky. Just the instructions online all work. You just got to methodically go through creating an image, use the DISM command, create an image. Got to have the right tools, the right SDK, the right Visual Studio, because this is a technical preview. But those bits are out there, and there should be some rapid iterations in the next few weeks to start to harden this and make this broadly available to the mass market. Again, it's free. Did we mention that? It's free. The IoT Core is free. So we actually publicly said that. Terry Myerson said that on stage. That's the version of Windows 10, that's free for device builders. So whether you're a maker, just wanting to make my home sprinkler system, automate my garage door opening or something like that, it's free. And it's also free for device builders, building professional devices. So I'm just going to see if I can... Aha. Let me do a quick demo. Oh, so what you're seeing here is a HP ElitePad. I've actually turned on right filter. I think I've turned on right filter, so this may backfire on me. I can't remember. I think I've turned on the right filter in this particular application. So what I'm going to do, do you see the layout here? I'm actually going to uninstall some apps, I think. Let's go uninstall some of these applications. We'll do more options. Uninstall that one. Yes, go uninstall that. Just unpin that one. We'll uninstall this application too. More options, uninstall that. Okay, so I've uninstalled a couple of apps. So again, this could be malware, deleting things, changing things on your system. I'll do a restart now. I can't remember if I turned on right filter. This could all backfire on me. So now, but the thing with right filters, while this system's rebooting here, you've actually got granular control over what is actually protected, your volume. You can actually do pass-through, like Windows Defender. You can actually do pass-through, so you can update your anti-malware policies. You can update other files, whether it's files or registry keys. So you do have lots of granular control over what is and is not protected in that overlay, and what gets written to. So here's my system. It's rebooting after I was maliciously uninstalling things, moving things around. And if I come back to my start screen, there we go. My apps are all back to square one, back to how they were. So again, pretty easy, pretty simple functionality, but a great tool to create a line of business asset. Main link.
Is the embedded in the IoT the same version now, or is it a new name for it?
So the question is the embedded and the IoT the same name now? Is that the question? Yes. Yeah. So a little history. So the embedded business in Windows has got moved into Windows. So it's no longer a self-contained organization. So it's part of Windows. We still support all the Windows embedded editions today. And then in Windows 10, we actually haven't come up with the names yet. So there will be Windows 10 editions for embedded devices, these line of business assets. The names haven't been decided. There's still some internal feature list, what feature goes in what edition. And it's not really on the embedded side, it's really on the enterprise side. So until the enterprise edition is fixed, what's in the core Windows 10 enterprise, when that decision has been made, kind of trickles down within our organization. So we will have, for want of a better word, we will have whatever we call them, embedded versions of Windows 10 for all these devices. We're calling it IoT. Our division has kind of changed to IoT. It's the name of our little subdivision. But again, as I showed earlier on that mapping, there will be a mobile version, an industry version that supports legacy Win32 apps, and the net new one is the IoT core. That's the big net new one in our group, our embedded IoT group now. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So, no names yet. Sorry. Yes, other question.
So even though they don't have two names yet, embedded used to be only available to OEMs?
Sorry, I have to come over here. I can't quite hear you.
In the past, embedded was only available to OEMs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, IoT is going to be available to anybody.
Oh, that's a great question. So in the past, the embedded editions were only available to OEMs. I was saving this to the end, but someone has bought and actually picked up on things. So I'm talking about these features like they're in the regular editions. Well, they are. So what's happening now is when we release Windows 10, the OEMs and the enterprise customers get the same editions. So everyone in the enterprise now, you don't have to go through VL, go get another edition and wipe and reload. You get these features in your edition, which is a big, big change. So very good question. I was saving that for the end. That's the big shift. So again, I was talking as if, okay, you just light up your asset, you just take a tablet, a PC, and then boom, I'm going to make a kiosk. You can do that. You can do those things now. You can extend the life of that asset, repurpose it, get extra value out of it. We haven't announced any, so before anyone else asks, there's no licensing, pricing. I can't cover any of those things because I don't know. Okay, I just done the little demo. So last section. You're still with me? Thank you. So core things we're adding into to Windows 10, and again it goes across these editions, is interoperability across devices. So I mentioned at the beginning, Some of these scenarios when you're light new business models up, you want device-to-device connectivity, and you want it in an open, seamless way, and you just don't want it all Microsoft and Windows. So we've joined alliances, like the Allseen Alliance, and some other alliances where these are open standards, API standards, to talk from device to device. So the Allseen all join one. It's an API that allows a Windows 10 device, whatever edition, even the IoT Core, the small little one that runs on this Raspberry Pi, allows it to talk to another Windows 10 device or an iOS device or an Android device. So everyone who's a part of that alliance, there's I think 100 companies now, all contributing, including Microsoft quite heavily, so that all these devices can be interoperable. So the use cases that initially come to mind for this are more consumer-driven use cases. These are ones that are, like home automation. You've got your locks, your garage door opener, you may be a security camera, all those things talking to each other about what's happening in your home. So they can communicate like, hey, someone's in the garage. You'll get a notification on your smart TV that someone's in your garage or someone's opened this door or that door. So this allows you to do it at an API level, and you don't have to worry about protocols and which device is talking to which device or which OS is. It makes the OS not part of the equation here. But we see this as a big thing for IoT in general. So it's not just the device connecting to the cloud. These devices need to communicate with each other. The other thing on connectivity is the APIs, talking to the sensors. So again, we've actually put in APIs and drivers and everything so that you can talk directly to the buses. So again, on this little cool device here, this Raspberry Pi, if anyone gets one to play with, it's got all these little pins here, these sort of GPIO, general purpose I/O. So you can plug in sensors, LEDs, you can plug in little things, and you can talk to them from a modern Windows application. You don't need to go get some special driver or go work with the hardware manufacturer of that widget you're plugging in. We've actually addressed that by putting all that in the OS. And it doesn't matter if you're running it on this little device here or whether you're running on the full desktop. If that piece of hardware has IOs attached to it as part of the actual platform, you can talk to them through a modern Windows platform. So I think we've done a cool demo at Build where someone actually plugged in, I believe it was one of these, to a monitor to create a digital sign. And they also plugged in a little proximity sensor. And they wrote a simple app, a UAP app, that as soon as you got close, the display changed. It went from like a wide angle lens, just a general display, to something more applicable to a user as they got closer. And then when they got really close, it changed to lots of little ads so that the user could actually see it, because they wouldn't have been able to see that from afar. That was a developer who's actually quite good. Took him all of like an hour to do the whole thing end to end, including plugging in the sensor and talking to that GPIO. And that's with, I think, any language, so all the .NET, so it's C++, C#, it doesn't matter. You just pick the language you're familiar with, and you can write to these sensors, get information from them, and turn them on and off. If we have time, I'll actually do it, but I think I'll probably run out of time. I'll actually show you, I'll turn on some lights for you if you need to. Yes?
What other platforms are you supporting?
So the question is, what other platforms are we supporting? So for Windows 10 IoT Core, initially we're supporting just the Pi for the makers, just to spark some interest and fun. We support the MinoBoard Max, which is an Intel processor. Slightly higher end board. That one's this is $35. The MinoBoard Max, I think, is about $100. Again, that could be used for makers for fun, but also for commercial, for OEM. So that you can actually run the full desktop on, but you can also run the core on it as well. So those are the initial two we've actually publicized. We are working on other ones that you mentioned. We're working on a bunch of them, but we can't tell you about it yet. So sorry about that. But there are other hardware platforms, and I call rapid dev kits to get up and running making devices. Yes, it does get interesting as you find Windows running on these different types of hardware, whether it's ARM or x86 or whatever. It does become quite interesting. And the last one here is really the cloud connectivity, seamless connectivity to Azure. It's really talking about the services there and some of the new technology that's coming out and how we're bundling things to make it easy to onboard data. Because Azure, I mean, it's quite a complex beast, that cloud, all the infrastructure. Some of you may be pretty familiar with how to do these things. It's, you know, as we say in English, water off a duck's back. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before. It's pretty easy for you. But, you know, we're creating a suite so to actually make it easy for you as well, so you don't have to learn all the complexities. So I'll go through a couple more slides here, and we'll wrap up. Let's see if I have time for questions. Okay, so this was the all-join one I mentioned. So this is the interoperability across devices. So you'd have all these devices, you know, talking to each other, your fridge, talking to your TV, talking to your hi-fi system, talking to your air conditioning system. So it really is it's a whole range of devices. So they're all interoperable. It's a framework, and it's all open source. Again, it's all open source. It's kind of like the new Microsoft. So this is all open, and we contribute to it and publish to it. So this is a great way if you're creating a home automation. And I've actually seen this being used in some commercial uses now. I've started to see a few people use this for different industries like conferences, like hotels, and like office automation, where they're starting to automate things to create a much better user experience. So think of like your hotel where you come in and out from your own device. You can do the blinds, you can do you know, the alarm clock. All these different things can interact with each other based on your own personal experience because they're all joined talking to each other and talking to your mobile device. So I mentioned the sensors. The initial buses we support for programmers are the GPIO, which is general purpose input-output, all those little pins you can address and talk to, read information from. The I2C, that's a serial bus, pretty common, it's been around a long time. So those of you who are hardware engineers, you can actually talk to this from a modern Windows application, a universal Windows application. You can actually bring in information to that app and do something with it. So it's pretty impressive. I think there were some demos built. I was trying to have one here. It didn't get sent in time. It's still in shipping. We have a little weather station demo where we're actually using the serial bus to actually, you know, read all that information, really fast information about humidity, temperature changes, airflow, all these things from an actual weather station, a small little chip that has all these sensors on it, and just stream that to Azure. And then have these nice dashboards to show, you know, what's happening with that particular weather station. So this allows you to do it in a modern app and actually onboard all that data. And as mentioned earlier on, because this is Windows 10, this goes across all the platforms. So when it's in the core, this is in the IoT core, it goes across these editions. So I mean, that's really the key there, is you'll all get access to this. It's not just the OEM community as a partners. Enterprise customers will get access to this as well. So the last couple of slides, I'm going to talk very high level about Azure. There's lots of sessions on it in this conference. I encourage you to go to them to learn more. Basically, we have Azure IoT services, so all these services to onboard data. Event hubs for, you know, just rapidly ingesting the data, and not burdening your solution with too much cost. You know, you can rapidly ingest all the events, different protocols, REST, different protocols to actually ingest the events from these devices. And then with event hubs, you've got cool things like you can put up expiration. So you could be pulling in massive amounts of data, and it will expire after like maybe 7 days. So you're not burdened with the cost of like, oh my God, all these devices now, my Azure bill is going to be like crazy astronomical. It's going to be, oh no, after 7 days, it's gone. So you have to do something with it. You have to, you know, put it in storage, put it in tables, use Service Bus to do some like manipulation of the data, putting it into a table, then do some analytics on it using some of the analytics, stream analytics or machine learning. Then you can use the presentation, Power BI, to actually, you know, do something meaningful and actually show it in a dashboard, and notification hubs to push it to mobile devices. So there's lots of services there to create really cool IoT solutions once you've got the device and once you've got the data going to it. And then this is something new that's coming out. I think Sam George may have spoken about this earlier. not released yet, but this is, I think we mentioned it in a blog. There's going to be this IoT suite. And basically, it's a really acceleration time to market. It's like for early adopters. Most common use cases will be like remote monitoring, asset management, and predictive maintenance. So being able to onboard data, we'll have the algorithms and some of these services already set up so that once you onboard the data, we'll do some of that predictive maintenance for you, look at patterns, and use some algorithms to look at patterns to find out what's going wrong, where, when, and how. So it's really simplified, and we've got a simplified billing approach there. So if you take the other approach, do it yourself, there's lots of services you can do. You've got to put it all together. The billing may be a little bit complicated, trying to figure this out. Maybe you're a little bit too scared to put your toe in the water and give it a try. So this suite really is about helping you, getting you started and providing a much simpler billing model where you can just look at it as one entity. And the third piece to this is really scaling it so that you can actually do some prototyping without incurring cost. So you can do some rapid prototyping, experimenting without incurring any cost, and then you can scale when you need to. So, you can give something a try for a number of devices. There'll be some limit of devices, experiment with this service, and then if it's starting to work and prove out, you can then scale up. So this is kind of exciting to rapidly onboard people for IoT. I don't know any more information on that. I think I'm not sure if it's coming out later this year or next year. I'm not sure. We'll have to go ask the Azure people on this one. So really, just do a few wrap-up slides here, and then I'll take more questions if there is any. We really have a comprehensive suite. No other company has, like, the services we offer in Azure, such a comprehensive list of services to create IoT solutions, and such scale. If you really want to create a massive solution, onboard lots of data, and scale it globally, there are very few companies that can do this. And then we think with Windows and all the capabilities we're putting into the platform, all these IoT capabilities, whether it's locking down the device, talking to sensors, talking across device to device, all these different capabilities, we think together Windows and Azure create a great solution for IoT. And the last piece there, the free IoT Core Edition, is definitely a thumbs up for a lot of people in this space anyway. I'm going to skip my demo because that's the one that didn't come in. And we're running out of time. And I mentioned some of our ecosystem partners for IoT. We're working with the All-Seen Alliance, that's the API, interoperability across devices. We're also working with the Industrial Internet Consortium. So that's for like the machine learning, industrial PLCs, programmable logic controllers, industrial PCs, all talking to each other, using different protocols, MQTT, etc. So to do machine learning. So that's about device to device again as well. So we're placing our bets everywhere. Microsoft is actually not just picking one or the other. We're investing heavily in all of these. Because we see different plays for, maybe one's more like home automation, and maybe one's more industrial. We're actually making sure we invest everywhere in this space. And then there's some actually fun things like the Raspberry Pi, this little device. Running Windows on a little $35 board is pretty cool. So we're quite happy about that. Just excite the community about making cool stuff. And then the announcement with Arduino, there's a whole bunch of shields. They call them shields that plug onto. They're called Arduino shields. They have like Zigbee, Z-Wave, different shields that plug on to a form factor of wiring pins here. So we actually support that in Windows 10 as well. So all of you super nerds out here who actually do play with Linux and Arduino, you'll be quite happy because actually you can now support those products as well. So I think I'm just about out of time. So what this means for you, we're really on this convergence journey. You've heard this many times. It's a fantastic time to be here because we're actually converging everything into this one platform. So again, great question asked earlier on. All these core features are now starting to appear in the one Windows platform. So all these IoT capabilities, lockdown capabilities, You as enterprise customers will get access to all of this. You won't have to go get it from an OEM. You get the specialized devices from them still to meet your need, but you have access to this as well. So it's a great time to be here, and it also then enables you to actually use this technology with the Azure technology to create new innovative solutions and maybe make that business change that you're looking for in your corporation. So I think that's it. I'm kind of out of time. Thank you for hanging with me in the afternoon. So with that, I'll just open up for questions, and thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. Oh, there's some sessions to go to. If you some other cool sessions to learn more about what I've talked about.